So, someone recently asked how I would consider the Medusa and the Bloodwrack Shrine in regards to my discussion about monster artillery. A few monsters, including the Medusae, both Shrine and basic version, as well as the Ancient Salamander, I would sort of call like missile cavalry monsters, which is a little bit weird to say, but they're not necessarily artillery because their range is more standard skirmisher, right? 125 on the Medusa. On the cart here, the Scream Tank, as I have affectionately dubbed it, Loopy against Damon here, ODM, internal Civil War practice. I'm not really sure, but posted by Loopy, so big thanks to him for this replay. And yeah, the Scream Tank is here, so I would consider the Doom Wheel sort of in the same category. Almost, the Steam Tank is a chariot and a monster artillery. The Doom Wheel is a chariot and a missile cavalry monster, especially considering, the damage that, say, for example, Ikit can do, which we saw recently. But let's have a look. Already Dark Riders getting involved. We've got the Cygors chucking rocks here. Eye of Morslib and Summoned Cygor as well. Marathi leading the way for the Dark Elves. Some Sad Swords, Fear Spears, Shades with dual weapons. Interesting choice. Some Dread Spears, Bleak Swords in the back. The Dark Riders kind of harassing for the Beastmen here. Butchers of Kalkengard. We've got Ungor Raiders. Front line of some Spearman Herd. And some Gore Herds with shields as well. Malagor leading the way. Minotaurs with great weapons. So, interesting build. Sons of Goros along with the Poison Warhounds. Kind of nice sample pack, a sample platter of Beastmen, if you will. Sorry for the background noise, guys. Cats coming around again, and I will be posting cat pictures, by the way, for those of you guys curious. But anyway, back to the battle here. Scream Tank moving up in the front line. So the Scream Tank does really decent missile damage. It's not amazing in comparison, but it's definitely not bad. 375 over 10 seconds. It's got 120 base, 60 explosive AP, 60 armor piercing base. So that explosive kind of the armor-piercing tooltip is not necessarily 100% accurate. It's a little bit misleading in that the explosion is not totally armor-piercing damage. It's also a pretty tight explosion, but the biggest thing you'll notice here about the gaze attack of the Medusa is that its missile speed is insanely fast. Like, it's faster even than gunpowder units, which are well known for having fast missile speed. And what that means is it's basically impossible to dodge. And it can also be very accurate shooting at individual targets, like even shooting foot characters and, other things like that. The characters in the air especially, they can hit pretty reliably because of that fast missile speed. There's a definite benefit there. Not only that, but of course, the Scream Tank also has some nice AoE buffs and debuffs, which are currently active. Maybe not, actually. Yeah, not actually close enough to be hitting either of those units. But anyway, taking a look at the rest of the battle here, Shades are just unloading on some various units here as the Dark Elf infantry pushes up. Sad Sword is able to kind of win with the support of the Bloodwrack there, and Helbroni doing their thing. Marathi dives down to fight these Minotaurs. We're going to get a big old pitched engagement over here. Both Minotaurs diving in, trying to catch Marathi, but of course, she is pretty strong in her AoE debuffs. You can see they're down to only 18 attack there, 27 for the Butchers of Kalkengard. Of course, the bonus versus large still applies, but a really nice timing for that Murderous Prowess to kick off. The Dread Spears get a nice little attack buff. They're going to punch even better, more cost-effectively against the Minotaurs there, although Centaurs and Chariot Caster rather, just making mincemeat of these poor Shades in the backline. They're having a hard time, but the Sons of Goros also pushed away by the Bloodwrack Shrine. Big ol' Eye of Morslib up on the high ground there, still throwing rocks. Gonna try and hit the Bloodwrack, which he does actually right on the money, like right where she's standing. That is a pretty impressive shot, all things considered. Does the Bloodwrack actually have magic resistance, though? I believe it does, so believe it or not, yeah, that's not gonna do as much. 25% magic resistance definitely helps mitigate some of the damage of that big rock. And looks like that one there hitting the Shades, which is definitely a better target. Nice consecutive Spirit Leeching from the Bray Shaman here. Death, as he scoots around, he is going to want to try and run from Marathi, and Warp Gaze is moved there as well. Looks like these Raiders are going to maybe try and unload. The Helbroni are within range, though, to try and keep them from doing so. So some nice back and forth here. Beastmen are on a pretty big power spike right now. Despite the Murderous Prowess, just the Minotaurs are quite healthy. They were able to prevail in that side engagement pretty well, despite the Murderous Prowess on those spears. I mean, they are just low-tier spears after all, and the Minotaur is much faster, can kind of just reposition Now, though, as they kind of get blobbed up around the Scream Tank, you'll notice that the other nice thing is the Medusa continues to fire while in melee up on the shrine, from what I've noticed. Nice Doom Bolt there from Morathi, her Bound Doom Bolt, and a really nice Soul Stealer hitting the Minotaurs with great weapons. I mean, it's only the one unit, but they are very high value. And this other unit of Minotaurs, the Butchers of Kalkengard here, would still take pretty significant damage from that. The regeneration would help somewhat, but Scream Tank now moves in there, and you can see the debuffs affect slightly and also help the Bloodwrack. I mean, it's not an engagement she would want to take long term, but she can kind of hold these guys in place here. Maybe allow Morathi or, like, yeah, some of these Shades now to get some clutch shots in there. The Dark Riders sweeping up and in, and they get a really nice rear charge. Only 45 armor on the Minotaurs, even the Butchers of Kalkengard, so although they do get a nice little counter charge in there, still with the kind of melee defense debuff and everything, they do take some extra damage. Dark Riders quickly get terrified, but a nice little punch there. And of course, Morathi fighting with all the debuffs here. Yeah, I believe she had them. I'll have to have a look at the tooltip. Oh man, look at that. The rock comes in, beans are right on the head. She also has 25% magic resistance, though, so some benefit there. And yeah, it does look like she has both Heartrender and Dark Sword and Enchanting Beauty, so that big old melee attack, melee defense debuff, 18 melee attack, which is significant, especially against a faction like Beastmen that is hard-hitting, can't necessarily stand up in a prolonged fight, so if you can kind of nerf their ability to hit you by debuffing their melee attack significantly, helps certainly. Oh man, the attack is quite brutal. I mentioned using it against foot characters, against light infantry as well. Especially tightly packed in an engagement like that, it will hit a number of unit models, and although the explosion's pretty tight, it doesn't do that much AP against light infantry like this. Can really pay some dividends. So the Scream Tank, in terms of being kind of a hybrid chariot, a missile unit, very much like the Steam Tank, in that you want to try and use it maybe somewhat sparingly. I'd say it's definitely squishier than the Steam Tank, obviously not unbreakable. Is much cheaper, that being said, but yeah, it doesn't have great AP values. 20 bonus versus infantry and 23 attack base, also only 39 charge, so it's not going to be nearly as potent on the charge as a Steam Tank. Also a much bigger hitbox, so there's some considerations there about using it in melee. You definitely want to use it a little bit more sparingly, I would say, than you would a Steam Tank. But yeah, Malagor finally getting revealed here is going to start to get run over. You can see that missile attack hit him. It didn't do a ton of damage, but if you're able to kind of stay on him over time, it will do successive damage. Oh, nice 1-2 punch right there. I don't know if that missile attack actually hit him, but it looks certainly very cool. Meanwhile, Morathi jumps down. She's not in the best situation, actually. Like, with the support of these spears here, this Cygor will be able to fight pretty well. Even, I mean, 7 melee attack, and their bonus versus large is not a lot on these poor Ungor spearmen. Only 12 bonus versus large, so they're hitting for 19 effective attack there. Morathi with her 40 melee defense, they're going to be close to base hit chance, or sorry, minimum hit chance. But now the Scream Tank comes around, going to stack things even more in Morathi's favor. Some nice point blank evil looks from the Medusa, just, you know, hateful eyes. And that should be it. Beastmen now starting to... Whoa, maybe not. Morathi gets terrified here. Oh, man. Maybe the Beastmen can actually pull this out. Malagor is quite healthy here, as are this one unit of Sad Swords here. They're also quite healthy. 2 Butchers of Kalkengard also coming back. They are done regenerating. They're, you know, both at full HP with their individual models. They should be able to fight for some time, but the Eye of More Sleep also routes here, meaning the one source of terror is gone. Keep in mind the Butchers of Kalkengard also cause terror, of course. They could come in here and get a terror route, but the leadership stabilizes pretty well, and you can see these Bleak Swords, 38-34 in terms of their stats. They've actually done very well, 106 kills. And Sad Swords, no more. They paid for themselves finally, and yeah, got a couple ranks in the process. Their stats are good enough that they can actually fight Malagor here okay in a surround. They will die in droves, but it is what it is. The Butchers of Kalkengard go after the Scream Tank, who, with, again, the debuffs and buffs, would be able to maybe do some damage here. We'll see. Could end up turning in against the Scream Tank, excuse me, but Butchers do disengage. We got the Ungor Spearman coming back here. I believe, is Morathi back? Morathi is. She's got 80 HP. Wow, just absolutely refusing to give in. And the Butchers there, they get actually rear charged by the Scream Tank, which is able to do some damage. They're both still regenerating. Did a model actually go down there? Nope, both of them are still alive. Malagor, though, is about to give us his leadership, and a very clutch charge from these Dark Riders, once again getting a nice little rear charge. That damage burst is enough to finally clear off the Butchers of Kalkengard. Malagor also gets terrified at the same time. Bleak Swords, Sad Swords, finish off those Spearman herds, and now it's down to just the, the Scream Tank versus the Eye of Morslib. 389 versus 877, and actually, I say it's, you know, one-on-one, but in fact, the Sad Swords are going to be clutch here, just slapping the ankle of the Cygor. He is most angry about this. He says, this is not a fair fight at all. This is not what I signed up for. I'm going to run for the hills. Morathi gets a little rear charge there. She actually has a very good charge on her Dark Pegasus. 85 charge, finishes off the Cygor. Now it's just Malagor left. The sad, sad goat men. Yes, can only do so much against such reckless screams. Taggart witches. Yeah, there are a few Ungors actually that will come back, but for all intents and purposes, it is done as Malagor gets finished off. So very well played to both players. Super, super close game at the end of the day. And how about that Scream Tank actually kind of carrying in the late game there? And big credit to Loopy for kind of ping-ponging it back and forth, getting some nice cycle charge action as those units were engaged. By the way, all the way tournament legal from what I saw, so very good stuff. 146 kills, almost 3,000 damage value, 16,000 damage dealt. That is what a well-microed Scream Tank can do for you. Morathi also, absolute terror in the night, 3,365 damage value. In general, I would say, actually, basically all of the Dark Elf units did pay for themselves for the most part, except the Shades. They were a little bit of a rough patch. The Dark Riders also, some did okay. I mean, their timing was clutch, even if they didn't get all that much damage value. They had some pretty timely rear charges in terms of leadership penalties, but Sad Swords no more. Man, these guys definitely faring very well here, kind of against the chaff of the Beastmen with those kind of mild debuffs and debuffs. In the case of Morathi, pretty heavy debuffs, rather. They are able to trade better into these low-tier Beastmen chaff, and even more so with the recent minor changes. All kind of stacks together, make things pretty good for them overall. And then, yeah, for Demon here, Malagor, credit to him, he played very well with the Malagor build, which is a risky pick sometimes, but Malagor himself probably paying for himself just about. Bray Shaman Lord of Death also doing a decent job as well. The low-tier Beastmen units, Gore's not so cost-effective. The Ungor Spearman herds generally pretty cost-effective overall. Raiders, this is one of the few times, I mean, one of them paid for themselves, one of them did not. Generally, you see them very much pay for themselves. Sons of Goros, maybe slightly under where they should be. The Minotaurs, the Great Weapons are a tough one. I'm not the biggest fan. I think even at that price point, you still want to take the Shields instead over the Great Weapons, just because they have more sustain. Can dish more damage out because they're alive for longer. I have more sleep also. Massive damage value, definitely paid for itself. 10,000 damage, 2,800 damage value. Fun stuff. Very, very fun one. So just to kind of wrap up the discussion about the Scream Tank here, definitely the support abilities are something to consider. And if we kind of compare to, say, like the Doom Wheel or the Steam Tank, that is one thing that makes the Scream Tank stand out, right? It also does not shoot 360. The Steam Tank does, to a degree, right? It has its steam gun mounted up on the turret, which can fire in 360. It doesn't do all that much damage, but it is there. The Doom Wheel, depending on which one you take, will do a significant amount of missile damage in a pretty short radius. But, yeah, the Bloodwrack Shrine as a chariot, if we kind of compare it, is worse than both of these two. I mean, the Doom Wheel, more, I mean, that's even the ROR, which is maybe not the fairest comparison. We'll go with the basic one, which is significantly cheaper, so maybe it is actually a fair comparison. But, more weapon strength, yeah, more charge bonus, more armor, less leadership, but much faster, better melee defense in particular, although the debuffs do kind of counteract difference in attack and defense somewhat. Obviously, the missile damage is way lower, but again, you can modify that according to which Doom Wheel you take. Like, if we go all the way to Ikit here, and the missile damage is very much comparable, if not even better. Anyway, yeah. Then you'll notice just the weapon strength also. Non-armor piercing damage is pretty painful. That's also true of the Steam Tank. Steam Tank, same weapon strength, but just better AP values, plus a much higher charge bonus. Steam Tank's not that much more expensive, actually. I guess only 400 points, which is a significant amount, but it's not too much, and you do gain an full-on artillery attack, unbreakable, you know, way more HP, way more armor. It is only slightly slower, but obviously you don't have the support elements, which is really where this thing comes into its own. Also the magic resistance, again, something to kind of consider in niche situations that will be quite nice, but +7 attack, +4 leadership in an AoE, and -7 defense, -4 leadership in an AoE is pretty decent. In certain matchups, it can be a bit risky, obviously, if you're going to be going... That's a silly sentence. If you're going up against... let's say, a lot of missiles, then this thing can be pretty risky. But against a faction like Beastmen that historically can struggle against armored single entities, it can be a good idea. Or just in terms of those melee-centric matchups, if you want to go counter rush, this thing, because it's short range, it can still get the value of its ranged attack also in melee as well. You can use it as a missile unit in a rush quite effectively, and that's one thing about the Bloodwrack Shrine that kind of synergizes well with Dark Elves overall. Yeah, I would definitely say it's a pretty underrated unit, not one you see too often, but in specific matchups like, again, Beastmen, Warriors of Chaos, I'm also a fan occasionally of taking it there to kind of help support infantry fights. Various factions, maybe Skaven as well, be a bit tricky in case of heavy Skaven missiles, but at the same time, like, I don't know, the mobile units they can bring might be able to get after it now a little bit better as well. I don't know, I'd have to try that one, but just kind of thinking through things. It's a surprise pick in certain matchups, especially if you think your opponent might go for more of a rush build. Like, say, for example, you're playing against my Empire, where I'm well known to go heavy rush with knights in that specific matchup. Maybe you take it there to help equalize those fights out a little bit. It's hard to say. You know, let me know your guys' thoughts down below. This certainly was a great use case for it, and I think Beastmen are probably the ideal faction to use it against in terms of a single matchup, but I'd be curious to get your guys' thoughts on other matchups you think it could be good in. Let me know down in the comments below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.